Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurial Musician, a newsletter, coaching service, podcast, and blog preparing today's musicians for tomorrow's realities. Today's episode is titled, What Perfectionism Actually Is. Thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for TEM. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I have temporarily shut off my air conditioning, which I try to do when I record because it's a little bit loud near the mic, but the heat index outside right now is 109 degrees. So if I forget to turn it back on when I'm done, I'm afraid that my tubas are going to possibly melt in my house. Luckily, they are insured. But anyway, I hope everyone is staying cool out there, and my heart really goes to the people who don't have shelter right now, because this is scary stuff. So anyway, last week's Quartet of Ideas, which is a newsletter from TEM, was issue number 31, and the most clicked on link was for a 2-minute read called Useful Weirdness. And even just the quote at the beginning of this, which I'm going to share with you now, was worth the click. It's from Kevin Kelly, who is actually the guy who came up with the blog post, the 1,000 True Fans concept. He's brilliant. And that's like 15 years old, and it's more true now than it was when he wrote it. But the Kevin Kelly quote that I shared in this week's Quartet of Ideas was, "That thing that made you weird as a kid could make you great as an adult if you don't lose it." Anyway, you can head to tem.fm/newsletter to see all of the back issues, and you can subscribe there as well if you would like to join the many entrepreneurs who have already signed up to get some inspiration and ideas along their musical path. So thank you to everybody who already has subscribed, and there will be another one in a couple of days. Okay, what perfectionism actually is. First, let's start with what it feels like. Perfectionism feels awesome. It feels like we are taking things really seriously. It feels like we have incredibly high standards. It feels like we're being patient and thoughtful. It feels like we are being true to the art form. This is why it's so seductive, is because those things are all good, right? Sadly, absolutely none of those things are true. They're all lies that we tell ourselves. What perfectionism really is finding one aspect of something that you can use to justify holding the whole thing back when subconsciously that was what you were hoping for all along. So let's take those seductive feelings one at a time, and I'm going to use a composer as an example. Perfectionism feels like we are taking things seriously. Are we truly taking things seriously by hiding our work and refusing to share it? Or do we take things seriously when we share the work with the world and get busy doing the next thing? The next one, perfectionism feels like we have really high standards. Well, who has higher standards? The composer who keeps iterating and keeps on honing their creative voice, which only comes over many years of actually doing the creative thing. Or is it the one who thinks a lot about how a piece they have already been writing for a long time could be just a little bit better or isn't quite good enough, but they never actually implement any of the ideas that they come up with? Perfectionism feels like we are being patient. Well, who is being more patient? The composer who patiently realizes that their latest piece is not an ultimate referendum on their worth as a composer, but is instead just a snapshot of where they are at on their journey right now, or the composer who is so terrified of judgment that they haven't shared anything with the world in a long time. And finally, perfectionism feels like we are being true to the art form. Who is being truer to the art form? The composer who writes a work, shares it, learns from it, and writes the next one? Or the composer who takes 5 times longer to compose a piece, if they ever actually finish it at all, only gets feedback on their pieces once a year rather than once every couple of months, etc.? By the way, for the record, I know some pieces take a year to write. That's not my point. The time intervals I chose there were just arbitrary. The point is that the person who keeps doing the thing is taking the thing much more seriously than the person who is thinking about doing the thing. I personally strive to be the kind of person who does things rather than thinking about doing things, and that is simply not possible if you are a perfectionist. So look for those red flags and honestly ask yourself if something is already good enough to share with the world. An overwhelming percent of the time, the answer will be yes. All right, this week's quote is from Jean-Luc Godard, which is, quote, "He who jumps into the void owes no explanation to those who stand and watch." What's a safer way to get a B plus on a school project? Doing an above average job of doing the same thing in the same way that everybody else did, or doing something that is thoughtful and remarkable and maybe completely out of left field compared to what the professor is expecting? It is obviously the former, right? Obviously, just doing an above average job, a really thorough job of the same thing in the same way is the safest way to get a B plus. Here's the thing though. The people who are wired to always want to safely get that B plus with the occasional A thrown in while being guaranteed to never get real pushback in the form of someone not understanding what they're trying to do will frequently criticize the people taking the risks because that gives them cover to not take any risks themselves and gives them cover to not do any remarkable work. If you are young, remember that school is set up such that the student who makes predictable and safe choices while putting in a lot of work will get good grades. And that very much includes schools of music on the college level, for the record. The problem is that the world, and especially the music business today, rewards the exact opposite behavior. So the educational system is set up to reward the wrong thing, with some obvious exceptions that include classes like band when they are taught the right way. And if, like me, you are not young, remember, by the way, I was like looking at myself and I was like, boy, I'm in summer mode. I needed a haircut like a month ago. I needed to shave like 4 days ago. Anyway, it looks like I just woke up and I've been up all day. Anyway, if, like me, you are not young, remember that we are all still wired to think that way after so many years. I coach people for a living to take calculated risks and can explain to them ad nauseum why it is beneficial for them to do so. Not just that it is beneficial, but even the reasons why it's beneficial. And yet I still have to talk myself into taking risks all the time. That's how ingrained it is in me to keep my head down, to not stand out, and to make safe choices. So when the people who never ever jump into the void tell you why that's a bad idea, know that they are almost always misguided, even when they are people who care deeply about us and are desperately trying to help. Thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for watching. If you are checking this out on YouTube, thank you to everybody who has left a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or who has subscribed, liked on YouTube, who has shared an episode with a friend, who shared an episode with an enemy. And thank you for your most valuable commodity, your attention. There's a lot of voices that you could be listening to right now, and mine is one of literally millions. So I really, really do, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate you. And thank you to all of my Patreon patrons for helping to make TEM possible. And that is going to do it for another episode of The Entrepreneurial Musician. Thank you.